After the end of the pandemic related eviction protections, Los Angeles landlords have filed more than 50,000 evictions. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's going over the whole issue of what happened after the end of all of the pandemic related eviction protections in Los Angeles. There were a lot of evictions filed. There were landlords who were waiting for a very, very long time in order to file those evictions, and it was almost always for non-payment of rent, regardless of what all of the tenant advocates and the politicians were saying. Landlords were not getting paid rent, and they filed eviction because they need to put tenants in their units so that they can actually stay in business. Okay, it was pretty logical. It's pretty simple, but they play it off like, oh well, these tenants, they're just bad guys. No, we just don't like to sit here and pay other people's bills for them. Okay, so 50,000 evictions, and they said over 95% of them were for non-payment of rent. Okay, this is the stat that I've been talking about for a very long time. I've read stats that say anywhere between 92 and 98% of all evictions throughout the entire country are for non-payment of rent. So don't believe for one second that, oh well, this is just a bad situation or a malicious landlord. No, it has to do with the tenants not paying their bills. The contract they signed, they agreed to, they need to pay. And it sucks that the government of Los Angeles was sitting there protecting these tenants who weren't paying their bills and forcing that financial hardship onto those landlords. But it was inevitable. It was inevitable that there would be this tsunami, this tidal wave of evictions after all those protections ended. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. So of these 50,000 evictions that were filed in Los Angeles, how many people do you think will actually be evicted? I imagine not that many. And even the ones who are evicted, they might force landlords to pay relocation costs. I believe that, there's a lot of stipulations just for a landlord to be able to remove a tenant, okay? A lot of stipulations. And it is unfortunate that, even with the ability to now file evictions, it might still take quite a while to get these tenants up out of your property. But, it is what it is. It's better than nothing at this point. But anyway, let's get into this article and see what it says. This article is coming from themessengernews.com, and it says LA landlords issue 50,000 eviction notices after COVID protections expire. Over 90% of Los Angeles tenants were given 3 days to get out of their homes, but the city is offering more help. All right, let's get into it. Tenants in the Hollywood neighborhood were handed the most eviction notices in Los Angeles after protections introduced during the COVID-19 pandemic lapsed earlier this year. Those living in the 90028 zip code received 3,585, the most for any LA neighborhood, out of nearly 50,000 notices accounted for, according to new data released by LA City Controller Kenneth Mejia on Monday. In August alone, 5,575 notices were filed across the city. Other top neighborhoods affected by eviction since the pandemic era protections lapsed in April include Fairfax, Westlake, and the Jewelry District in downtown LA. So, 50,000 sounds like this huge, huge number, but, keep in mind that Los Angeles is like the second largest city in the entire country. About 4 million people live there. There are literally hundreds of thousands of rental units within the city limits, okay? Hundreds of thousands, so 50,000 really isn't a huge, huge number, especially considering that this is the pent up demand of evictions, while those landlords were sitting there and waiting for 3+ years to be able to evict some of these tenants. Okay, so yeah, there's going to be a big bump at the beginning, and then things will gradually return to the normal rate. Okay, but don't doubt for one second that these landlords, they've taken enough losses and they need to get these people up out of these properties. They have some interesting statistics in here though, and I'll continue with the article. The main reason behind the evictions is non-payment of rent. A total of nearly 186.5 million went unpaid this year. The majority owed landlords at least $2,000. For many renters, time to collect their belongings and leave was limited. 91% of the notices gave just 3 days. Figures come a week after the city of Los Angeles announced an emergency rental assistance program for those struggling to pay because of unemployment, a reduction in income, or incurred significant costs. You know, like they said it right there. The majority owe over 2 grand. Okay, the grand majority of the people who owe money. But I mean, that's pretty obvious. I mean, I think the average rent for Los Angeles is way above 2 grand. I don't know the exact number, but renting in LA isn't cheap. So even if you owe just 1 month of rent, you're already owe over that $2,000 amount. But you can't tell me that the landlords don't deserve to get their money. You can't tell me that. This isn't a socialist country. We're still a capitalist country. Even in California, even in Los Angeles, the landlord should be able to get paid for providing a service to you, which is your housing. Landlords will get up to 6 months of unpaid rent with a chance to also apply for assistance from the city. We must do more to keep people housed. And I want to make sure eligible Angelenos begin applying today for rent relief for back rent owed during the COVID-19 pandemic, or if you are currently experiencing a short term hardship, Mayor Karen Bass said in a press release. Like, you can't pay people's rent forever. You just can't. Okay? People need to be able to pay their own rent. If they cannot afford to live within Los Angeles, then they need to move somewhere that they can afford to live. And it's not a solution to basically allow everybody to live in cars or live in tent cities or whatever. That's not a solution. That's only creating a different sort of problem. Okay? So according to these bureaucrats, according to these bleeding heart leftists, right, the solution to this problem is, well, the government will pay your rent for you. And like, no, this is idiotic. This is idiotic. In the real world, people live where they can afford to live. Okay, no one has a right to live in Los Angeles. Yeah, it might be a great town for some people, not for me, but for some people, it might be a great place to live. But nobody has a right to live there. And so telling me that, oh, well, the government's going to pay these people over here their rent, no, that's dumb. It's just dumb. Okay, it's a move to socialism. It's a move to where the government controls everything. Housing, everything, and people, they will have no motivation to work. They will have no motivation to create something and actually participate within the economy and the society, and they will just be leeches, people who are leeching off of the people who actually are working. And eventually there will be more leeches than there are actually contributors. And that's when the socialist system will collapse. It's what happens everywhere. Okay? But anyway, I'm not surprised there are so many evictions filed. Hopefully landlords are able to get these people up out of their properties, and they're able to finally get tenants in their properties who are paying the rent.